Now moving over to our favorite segment, starts of the week. We missed on a few last weekend. I'd say the one that kind of stood out, that I hit on at least, was Nick Foles. We both kind of hit on our tight ends. You had Jared Cook. I had Greg Olsen. They both played fine. But elsewhere, across the board, not feeling great. So what we're going to do, guys, is kind of change some of the formatting that we're going to bring to these starts of the week. So here, these are more of our guys that you're probably on the edge, but should be locked and loaded starters this week. And we're going to have another segment later on where we're going to really call our shots. And we're going to call that segment Deep Shots of the Week. So let's go into our starts of the week. We'll go quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. Alex, I'll pass it off to you. Give me your quarterback start of the week in week 12.
All right, Steph, my quarterback start of the week. You've heard it before. I'm going back to the well, repeating my quarterback from last week. It is Derek Carr for the Oakland Raiders. Last week, he was my start of the week, and he ended up as QB 11, which you're pretty happy with, at QB 1. He had 19.8 fantasy points, which is fantastic as a streamer. And this week, he faces the New York Jets, whose defense has not been great against quarterbacks this season, especially of late. They're 22nd, giving up 18.7 fantasy points a game to the quarterback position. And over the last 4 games, the New York Jets have faced off against Gardner Minshew, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Daniel Jones, and Dwayne Haskins.
Wow.
So not necessarily the most elite group of quarterbacks. And over the past 4 games to those guys, they're giving up 23.7 fantasy points a game. So everyone's been able to dismantle the Jets this year. Derek Carr's been great. He's got a 72% completion percentage, which is second in the league. His passer rating is 105, which is 6th in the league. The Raiders' defense has been giving up some points, and I think Sam Darnold might actually be able to score on them a little bit now that offense has gotten healthy and seems like they're getting in rhythm. So I think Derek Carr might need to throw it a little bit in this game, and I think he's going to have a great week. The Raiders are 6-4, and they're rolling right now. So if you started Derek Carr last week, hold on to him and roll him out there again.
Absolutely, rolling with those playoff-bound Raiders. Your Gruden grinders there, Alex. For my QB start of the week, I'm taking the homer pick. I'm throwing Baker Mayfield out there. I love Baker this week. He's against the Miami Dolphins at home, and Miami is the 28th ranked defense against quarterbacks. Their defense just gave up 3 touchdowns to Josh Allen. And Baker's really been settling in as of late. He hasn't thrown a pick in 3 games. His last one was against New England after their bye. He torched this tough Steelers defense. He played well against Buffalo and Denver, all of which have been pretty difficult matchups. And he was fine for fantasy against Seattle as well. 19.5 fantasy points, even with throwing 3 interceptions. And he has all the weapons. Kareem Hunt really helps a lot in the passing game. Go check out my video on Kareem Hunt if you haven't seen it. But I think Baker is a locked and loaded start of the week. Expect 15 or more from him when you plug him in at your QB spot. Now moving on to running back, I'll pass it off to you, Alex, again. Give me your running back start of the week for week 12.
My running back start of the week is David Montgomery. And David Montgomery, I know he's been up and down this year. He's been disappointing. A lot of people spent some pretty early draft capital on him. And he was up there in the conversation with Josh Jacobs as the top rookie running backs heading into the season. Josh Jacobs has been nothing short of fantastic and is, in my opinion, the leading candidate for Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year. So David Montgomery, you can't always trust him, but I think you can this week. He's RB25 on the season, and last week he had a really tough matchup against the Rams and a tough game script, and they were behind in that game. So Cohen got a lot of snaps. Montgomery couldn't get much going on the ground, but he still had 14 carries. And over the past 4 weeks, we've really seen his usage increase. David Montgomery has averaged 18 carries per game for the past 4 weeks, and he's added 2 receptions per game. So that's 20 total touches in this offense. And they play the Giants this week, which is an okay matchup. They're 16th against running backs in fantasy. But just with that usage, I think there's some positive regression in line for David Montgomery. And I think he's a good candidate to score a touchdown this week. And if he gets those 20 touches, there's no reason he shouldn't go for 80 to 100 yards.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great pick there. Let me throw a quick question at you here. I know we're flying blind. This is not in our show notes. But Alex, who would you start this week? Would you start David Montgomery, the rookie in a timeshare, or would you start Miles Sanders, another rookie in a timeshare? He plays Seattle this week. Philly plays Seattle at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Who would you take between Miles Sanders and David Montgomery? Just curious.
Wow, that's a pretty tough question. I know Seattle has actually been pretty good against running backs this season. They're 13th, so they're marginally in front of the Giants matchup for Montgomery. I think I would have to wait and see on Jordan Howard's health. Jordan Howard didn't play last week, so I mean the Eagles had a tough matchup, so Miles Sanders was still hard to start. But if Jordan Howard's out against this week against Seattle, Miles Sanders should be the feature first down, second down, third down back in that game. So I think it's contingent on Howard's health. Keep an eye out if he's active or not. If Jordan Howard is not active, I would choose Miles Sanders over David Montgomery. But if Jordan Howard plays, I'd roll out the rookie. Well, I guess they're both rookies, so I'd roll out Montgomery.
Good. That was a good response. I know I put you on the spot there. I'm just curious. I'm always comparing these two rookies, Sanders and Montgomery. For some reason, just in my mind, they're linked for whatever reason. But moving on to my running back start of the week, for me, I kind of alluded to him a second ago with Baker. I'm taking another homer pick, and I think you can lock in Kareem Hunt this week, and by extension, Nick Chubb, but I know that's not a hot take. So I'm going to say Kareem Hunt. Again, they're against Miami. They're 24th against the run. We know Miami will hang in this game for a bit with Fitzmagic, and Hunt's been getting a lot of usage. And they're going to need him through the air if things start to get dicey against the Dolphins. He had 7 receptions in his first game back. He had 6 receptions in his second game back. And against the Dolphins at home, and as good as Kareem is, I expect at least one of these catches to go long. If he's getting 6 to 7, I expect at least one of those to be a touchdown or a 30, 40-yard breakaway chunk play. I think Nick Chubb does still cap Kareem Hunt's upside, but I think he is a guy you can confidently lock in for 14 to 18 points this week.
Wow, that's a really bold pick, especially basically saying that you could start Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt as your RB1, RB2 and be really satisfied. But I think it's a good pick, and Kareem Hunt's over his short career showed us that he's a playmaker, and he's been very effective and very involved in his first couple weeks back. And if you take that opportunity and that involvement, and if he gets into the end zone for the first time this week against a weak Miami defense, I think there's a pretty good chance he could finish as a top 20 running back this week. So I like your pick there, Steph. Moving forward to the wide receiver position, I'm actually going to stay in the same game. I'm going to stay in that Browns-Dolphins game, and I'm going to pick Devontae Parker. He's a guy we talked about on the pod last week. We've been talking about him a lot on our social platforms, on Twitter. Devontae Parker is a guy who I truly believe could be a league winner this year. He had a bad matchup last week against the Buffalo Bills, and we actually thought we should stay away from him, but he went out and he put up 7 catches for 135 yards in that game against a team that's top 10 against the wide receiver in fantasy this year. So Devontae Parker this week gets the Cleveland Browns, and the Browns are 11th against wide receivers in fantasy, but Devontae Parker is getting an absurd amount of targets in this Dolphins offense. Since Ryan Fitzpatrick took over and Preston Williams has gone out, we only have a 2-game sample size, but Devontae Parker has received 10 targets in each game. So he's actually less than 50% rostered in ESPN League, so if he's on your waiver wire, go pick him up. But if you've got Devontae and he's on your bench or you're deciding to flex him or not, he's been absolutely hot as of late. He's been incredible. Go pick him up. And I really think that the Browns could get out to an early lead in this game. And like we've seen all season, the Dolphins, we know they're going to be throwing the ball. And they don't have a ton of options there. So Devontae Parker should continue that streak of 10-plus targets. And I think he's really turning into an elite playmaker. And he's really maturing in this league. And he might have a late breakout. It took him a couple years. We all thought we might see this in his rookie or his sophomore season. But it looks like Devontae Parker's finally coming on. So if I've got him, I'm starting him with confidence this week. And I'm starting him with confidence for the rest of the season.
Great pick there. And my wide receiver start of the week is a guy that I don't think is talked about enough. He's the wide receiver 24 on the year, so he's right on the edge between wide receiver 2 and 3. But it's Jameson Crowder, and I know he's not a sexy pick, but here are his last 3 outings. He put up 22 PPR fantasy points against the Dolphins, 19 against the Giants, and 19 against the Redskins last week. And as you alluded to earlier, Sam Darnold is looking better. In games with Darnold this year, Crowder is averaging 8.4 targets and 6.4 receptions per game, averaging 70 yards, and he scored a touchdown in the last 3 weeks. I think that streak can 100% continue. And I really hope I don't see any questions from you guys about plugging in Crowder for your flex this weekend, anything like that. Plug him in. I think he's a confident start this week. And they're playing the Raiders, who are, I believe, 22nd against wide receivers this season. So a good matchup as well. In a streak of easy matchups, you see the rapport. I think Jameson Crowder is or should be a high floor, high upside start this week.
I really like that pick, Steph. I really do. He's been fantastic. And Sam Darnold continues to get into form this season, and they've got a great schedule coming up here for the next few weeks. So if you've got Crowder, you're starting him this week against Oakland, and you're probably starting him the next couple weeks as well, as they have Cincinnati and Miami. So moving forward to tight ends, it was really tough because, as always, you've got the top guys at tight end, and for our starts of the week, we don't want it to be guys that are locked in your lineup, so we're not going to pick the Ertz and the Kelsey and the Kittle or things like that. But then at tight end, it gets so shallow so fast, and there's some bye weeks this week and some injuries. So it was tough, but ultimately I found my tight end start of the week, and it's Dallas Goedert. And he's tight end 20 on the year, and he plays Seattle this week, who is 24th against tight ends in fantasy. And I know that Goedert is the second tight end on this team to Zach Ertz, but they use him a lot as a wide receiver. And we saw Alshon Jeffrey out last week, and he is in danger of missing this week as well. So if Alshon Jeffrey's out, they like to roll out two big body guys at the same time. So most of the time it's going to be Ertz and Alshon, and Goddard might slip in there. But when Alshon's been out, we've seen Goddard get some pretty good usage. And he scored a touchdown in 3 of his past 4 games. I think that could continue this week against Seattle in what should be a fairly high-scoring game. And Goddard's got 5 straight games with at least 3 catches. And I know 3 catches isn't a ton, but if you're looking at the tight end position, Goddard could actually be on your waiver wire. And if you've got a guy who you can lock in and feel confident he's going to get 3 catches and has a pretty good chance at scoring a touchdown, that's really all you're looking for if you've been playing this tight end roulette game every week. So Dallas Goedert, lock him in, tight end start of the week.
Yeah, and a game against the MVP caliber Russell Wilson and the Seahawks is going to be one with scoring potential on both sides of the ball. I think the Eagles are going to air it out. I think Dallas Goedert is a great pick. My tight end of the week doesn't feel as good. It's Vance McDonald, and it's essentially just because he's the last man standing for the Steelers offense. You had Juju announced out for this matchup this week against the Bengals. We had Deontay Johnson. I believe he is out in concussion protocol. James Conner is banged up, and the Bengals are in the bottom third of the league across essentially every defensive metric you can look at. And over the last 3 weeks, back-to-back, Vance McDonald's gotten 7 targets in his last 3 games with tougher matchups like the Colts and the Rams. So you can fire up Vance McDonald this week if you have him. I know it's not a sexy pick. It's not going to feel good putting him in there. I think he did have more value in previous fantasy seasons, but just hasn't looked great this year, especially with Mason Rudolph in the backfield for the Steelers. But Vance McDonald, roll him out in Week 12.
Nice pick there, Steph. I really like it. I like what you said about the 7 targets in the past 3 games. Really, at this point, if you're playing the tight end roulette like we just talked about, you want 2 things. You want guys that are on the field, they're involved in the offense, and that have a potential to score a touchdown. And it sounds like with Vance McDonald, he's going to get some targets, he's going to be on the field, and as always, he's got a chance to score.